I'm Josh Knight the First.
I'm Mars Girl.
And we just got back last night from watching the midnight premiere of Man of Steel, the new Warner Brothers foray into making Superman a movie franchise.
Yeah, it happened.
And normally we don't cover stuff like this in the podcast that we do, Beyond the Black Rims, and we've got a little bit more to say than we would be able to say in that short format. So here we've got this vlog to kind of go over our thoughts and opinions for this movie.
For those of you who are interested in that sort of thing, of course. And, of course, that, too, means that this is spoilers. Absolutely spoilers.
Yes.
So if you've either seen the movie already, or you don't care about spoilers and you really want to know, here we go. There's your spoiler warning.
Well, if you're watching this, you probably already know, but here we go. So, show-wise, normally I'd say an overarching thing about what I thought about it, but to be honest, I'm still processing through a lot of what I saw last night.
I can tell you that there were some flashy things that I did enjoy, but overall, I don't necessarily think it saved it as a whole movie.
Well, I guess the easiest thing to do is go through it chronologically. So, we start off on Krypton in this movie, and
in my opinion, the best part of the whole friggin' movie.
I will give credit where credit is due. Zack Snyder did an amazing job painting this picture of a world that is very alien, yet very functional on Krypton. He was able to give life to this whole council, to their ways of life, the way technology works there. It felt, I don't want to say real, but at least inhabited. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it felt believable. I would have watched an entire movie based on Krypton and the lead up to its destruction. I would have, quite honestly, I know it sounds really bad to say that that's the best part of the movie, and that's just the beginning, and then there's another almost 2 hours after that. But in all honesty, it's my favorite part of the movie and could have been far more elaborated on, and not... I could have just ignored the rest of the movie.
I'll echo as much as I kind of wish the Krypton part maybe had another 5, no more than 10 minutes on that part, and then, you gotta get into the rest of the movie. I think, despite, the problems we had with him in Les Mis, Russell Crowe as Jor-El is the best Jor-El thus far, out of any Jor-El. And I know some people are purists and still like Marlon Brando's take, but at least Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe, could pronounce Krypton correctly instead of Krypton, like Marlon Brando kept saying over and over, and that just irked me. I was a little off on the whole Avatar-esque animal thing going on there for a second. He jumps off a building, and then this winged bug dragon thing saves him. I mean, it was cool eye candy, and I
there's
think
a lot of eye candy in this
and
movie,
I was about to say that's something that I'm gonna probably get into a lot with this. Is we both have this very. We're both in agreement on this was something to look at. This movie is spectacle.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolute spectacle at points.
It's far more driven by its action sequences than it is by its story.
Right.
Except for the part in Krypton. Krypton part was pretty well written.
And then, we have General Zod, played, like I said, by Michael Shannon. I'm fine with his portrayal. They said right up front, this is not Terrence Stamp. So I wasn't expecting Terrence Stamp. I didn't get Terrence Stamp. I got a new take on the character. And that's fine. He played him, again, believable. It's understood. A lot of people aren't going to know this going into it, that... and I guess they might have needed to explain this a little bit more, maybe in the promotional material, that on Krypton, basically everyone's a test tube baby. You're decided at birth whether or not you're going to be a politician, a warrior, things of that nature. So Zod, by nature, is a warrior. Jor-El, by nature, is a scientist. But the thing that sets them apart is that whereas, yes, they've grown up in the society, Kal-El, who will eventually go on to be, Clark Kent, is a natural-born baby, so he has the choice of being whoever he wants to be. And that, yes, fits in very well with the arc of how Superman has to go through his journey in becoming this hero that we all know. So I'm cool with that. That was a good setup.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the planet explodes, and then we go to Earth.
And then the narrative just kind of falls apart, right? I mean...
Well, because, like, let's get one thing out of the way right now. The narrative jumps very, I would almost say harshly, from seeing the craft come to Earth. We never actually see it land, and I guess that's a moot point. But we jump straight to an episode of Discovery Channel's The Deadliest Catch.
Uh-huh.
And there we see this grizzled Clark Kent, and we only know he's Clark Kent because, watching the trailers, you see that's him. And it's like, why is he there? Why is he doing this?
Well, I mean, you can kind of assume over the course of the movie that he was doing tasks that would lead him to figure out where he came from, and yet, how would he have decided that getting onto a fisherman's boat was going to lead him to learning more about his past?
Because the thing is, we're given two different visuals, basically. We have current Clark up near, I'm guessing, the Arctic, and the past Clark in little vignettes of how he grew up. And the thing is, yes, this is the first time that's been done in a telling of a Superman story where they've jumped back and forth between his childhood and his modern-day experience. And I understand, yes, that's, Snyder's decision to do that, but I think it detracts very, very much from the development of this character. And so by the time you get to these fight scenes and spectacles later on in the movie, for me anyway, there was this very large disjunct between seeing what I see here that, yeah, this is supposed to be Superman, but I don't feel like he's become Superman.
Well, speaking of things that detract, I know I've talked about shaky cam before.
Yes,
but
yes.
The whole movie having not been shot on a tripod at all, like, even conversations, just really casual conversations where nothing terribly exciting is happening, and, I understand a little shakiness during action, but come on, I just want to see this conversation, just hold still. Like, it was bad. It was real bad to
Especially
me.
in those early on scenes, even in the flashbacks between, Martha and young Clark, or Jonathan and young Clark, you want to capture the emotion of this, but if you're seeing this go on, it does detract from the focus on the scene, and then that'll bring us to the parents, because, the whole thing about this story, the way they're telling it, is Clark is the child of two worlds. He's the child of Krypton, and he's the child of Martha and Jonathan Kent. And whereas Martha is seen as very nurturing and motherly, as she should be, Jonathan's portrayal, which I was worried about from the first time he said any lines in that first trailer, my worst fears came to light. He was not the role model he should have been for Clark Kent. He managed to try and teach him all of these different lessons about how he's going to become this bigger thing down the road, but the manner in which he tries to teach him is kind of bass-ackwards,
Well, the thing was, I understand why a father would teach this person the way that he did. However, I don't see an end result ending up with Superman after all this, because here's Jonathan teaching Clark, you need to be careful how you use your powers and all that, because people will think one way or the other of you. They won't let you be who you want to be. They won't just let you be. Right down to the point of Jonathan's death.
That I had a problem with.
And so it ends up looking like Clark respects his Earth father and his decisions for him, and his lessons of just be careful, I don't want to see you be mistreated or whatever, and yet he goes off and does the exact opposite things of what his dad taught him.
Because you look at it and you compare it in general to any other adaptation of Superman, whether it be live action or animated, and there's certain care taken in things like Smallville or Lois and Clark, or heck, even the animated series, to where young Clark, when he's developing these powers, heat vision, super strength, super speed, things of that nature, part of the lesson is learning to hide not so much that you have these powers, but when you need to use them, hide the usage of them. And Jonathan Kent's death, here in this movie in particular, because it's not the first time he's died in a story to push the story along. You know, he died famously in the Richard Donner version. He even died in Smallville. But here the death is very, and again we're going into spoilers, he and the family are on this interstate there in Kansas when a tornado comes through, and rather than letting Clark use his, I want to use the term God-given, but I guess writer-given powers to save people, save property, Jonathan tells him, stay back, I'm gonna go do it, me, my human self that can die very easily, and puts himself in the path of danger. But when the time comes for Jonathan to get out of the way, he can't because he's been injured, and then when Clark could very easily save him, he tells him no, non-verbally, and then he dies. And that, visibly hurts Clark, but then what does that do for motivation for this character? Because if this was any other adaptation of Superman, Clark could have very easily, there's a crowd of people there. Nobody's really focusing on people. They're focusing on that giant impending tornado. All Clark had to do would be go past the people like he was running away, and then super speed his way around, grab his dad, and nobody would have known the difference because there's whipping winds. They wouldn't have known what they saw.
Well, the lesson I would imagine learned from all of that would be, I have to let people die in order to protect myself. That's the kind of person I would imagine coming out of his life lessons and that situation with his father right then and there.
But then, when you look at that on the bigger scale, does that not show that Jonathan Kent is teaching his son to live in fear?
Yeah, absolutely. And so how is it that we ended up with the complete opposite character in the adulthood movie present?
And
how did that happen?
How does that happen? Because the emphasis is put very hard on Jor-El being his real father, his real motivation. Because Jonathan can say things like, one of these days you're going to have to show yourself to the world and you're going to have to decide what kind of man you want to be.
Never mind the fact that the lessons he's teaching are specifically one-sided.
Yes. Whereas Jor-El, as Zack Snyder has said in many interviews, is that Jor-El is a man who believes in leading from the front. Be a shining example to these people. They'll stumble, but they'll eventually want to follow after you. And yes, that's a great lesson to endow to your son. But the realization of that gets muddled up again in the narrative and the way this story is told. So we move on with the story to the present. Now, as we're shown visually, it's never, verbally explained, but Clark is moving from odd job to odd job, not trying to stick out very much, not trying to be on the radar at all. And I'm wondering why. Because there's been plenty of stories, because, this is a hero's journey. He's supposed to be looking for himself, but really, this doesn't seem like he's looking for himself so much as he's trying to hide, trying to live in fear. And that is anti-Superman.
Well, I couldn't really tell what it was he was trying to accomplish, to be honest with you. I'm not so certain that he was trying to hide so much as, say, he was just doing stuff and putting himself in places where perhaps he could do good things and then just disappear quietly into the night. And because he goes from odd job to odd job under different names.
Right.
So I don't really know what it was he was trying to accomplish, to be honest with you.
Until he just happens to, for plot's sake, find out that there's some mysterious thing up in the Arctic and he's got to go up there. And I was going to save this for the end, but it's just so jarring to me that I have to say it now. It's the biggest plot hole in the movie for me. How on earth does Clark Kent get all these jobs and these fake aliases? Because they say he's been using aliases all over the place. Because since this is set in the modern world, you need identification, you need cards, you need all of this stuff to verify who you are as a person. How is he doing it? If he's trying to stay off the radar, he's not saving up any money, because he's not working at a place long enough to make money, from what we're shown. So how does that keep happening? And it becomes an even bigger thing at the end, but we'll get to that later. And then, he goes up to the Arctic, he has no trouble getting on this military contracted dig for
like
finding...
the military wouldn't ask him for identification.
Yeah, because the military doesn't do background checks. Not in this movie. And, we're introduced to Lois Lane. And, people... I'll say right now, Amy Adams, great actress, awesome actress, And I was very happy with her casted as Lois Lane. But her purpose in this movie...
The way she's written is not... I do not believe it's up to snuff for who Lois is. Because, yeah, it's one thing to have her sassing off at authority. She does that in every version, just about, save the really early stuff. Mm-hmm.
Because that's a character tick of hers. But as for making her a fully fleshed out character, I don't see that.
Well, they throw around just how great of a journalist she is, and yet I don't feel like we ever saw her being a journalist other than trying to hunt down Clark Kent, and then that article that she wanted to write never made it to print.
Right.
So we never actually saw any of her award-winning articles.
Right,
ever.
We never see her articles. We see her voicing over what she's going to write, but then it's dropped for the sake of, relevance to the plot. And then, where's that leave you with the character?
And then she was just a chick.
And then she just becomes this, unfortunately, like every other version, a damsel in distress that has to be saved by Clark. Because I can't I don't feel good calling this character Superman. I don't. And we'll explain more about that in a second, because going into it, Clark finds his way into this alien ship, which you
which
can tell,
is what the government was there looking for.
and it ends up being a Kryptonian scout ship. So we don't have a Fortress of Solitude, we have this ship. And this ship has a little port that he can put a little key into that, activates I guess you'd call it a hologram or something of his dad.
Yeah, it's digital, it's his consciousness, it's not his physical body.
Right.
But it's his dad may as well be there, just you can't touch him.
Right. And he gives him...
He is a program, and he can override other ship programs.
And he gives him the plot dump. This is where you came from. This is what we did. This is the guy you should stay away from. Here's your costume.
Where'd the costume come from? I mean,
well, see,
it's 10,000 years old.
Yeah, it's a 10,000-year-old scout ship. What is the ship doing with this bodysuit with the House of L crest on it?
Like, I can come up with an excuse for it, but that's the thing. I have to come up with the excuse. The movie doesn't explain it to me. Like, I could be like, well, maybe the House of L is like 10,000 years old, and he happened to go and scout Earth 10,000 years ago, and there was his suit, and...
Yeah, because they kind of gloss over that, and if there's one thing that gets my goat in any of these superhero movies is when they gloss over how the hero gets his costume. Because it was what I appreciated about The Amazing Spider-Man, and what I appreciated about Batman Begins was the explanation of where the costume came from. I guess more so in Batman Begins because they explained how functional it was and why he wanted to look like a bat, why he had scallops on his arms, and things of that nature, whereas here it's just, oh, well, your dad wore it.
Oh, it's a thing from our planet. It's a suit that's similar to our military and blah, blah, blah. Whatever.
But I don't think there's enough weight given to it to rationalize him putting it on. Because he's already wearing clothes. I mean, yeah, they're a little tattered, but why would he put it on? It's like, oh, well, this is hand-me-downs. I guess I should see if it fits.
Like a glove!
Great.
And, I usually don't imagine a hero being put into a suit until he has earned the title of hero. And he hadn't nearly come anywhere close to
he's
becoming
done one or
a hero.
two small feats. He hasn't necessarily been fully heroic like you expect him to be, because yes, he saved those people on that oil rig. Yes, he cauterized, I should say, Lois's wound that she got because somehow she met him before everything. Way to take the Smallville approach. But now he's in this costume and he doesn't feel like a hero. it feels like Clark Kent wearing Superman's outfit, if that makes any sense. Because the thing about this, that, you know, most writers, when you get to the meat of Superman, is similar to Batman, in that, you know, with Batman, Bruce Wayne is the performance. With, you know, Clark Kent and Superman, Clark Kent is the performance, because he's, or is he? Or is Superman the performance? Because the thing is, you have to act two different ways, because you don't want to be recognized one for the other.
But he's acting as one dude
the whole movie.
The whole time. There is no separation between Clark Kent and Superman. And that especially becomes true as after that incident of Clark cauterizing Lois's wound, she then goes on this mission of, oh, I must find my hero! And then she hunts him down
very easily.
Very easily, for, like, she's not even part of the government. She's just some chick that wants to write a news story and, you know, she wants to see her savior again. She manages to find all the little holes in his moving from job to job and having all these different aliases, and then she's like, oh, you're Clark Kent. Oh, nice to meet you. Awesome. And then
that's, like, so... I can't say it took me out of the movie, but it made me be like, movie, what are you doing?
Well, then on top of that, Clark was just like, oh, that's cool, you found me. Alright, awesome. Like, he wasn't even worried.
No, it's not so much that he was worried. He explains at that point, it's at that point in the movie they do the flashback to Jonathan giving up his life to keep Clark's secret. And as such, in honoring what his father did, Lois decides not to run with the story and goes back to Metropolis, you know, storyless, and then Perry White chews her out.
But no, what I'm saying is, once it's found, once Clark figures out that she knows that he's this Superman, and we're not really calling him that because he hasn't been called that, once he figures out that she knows his identity, like, he's not even bothered, he's just like, oh, that's cool, oh, you found me, and then once he puts on the suit, and once the government wants to know who he is, once we get to this next step of Zod showing up and being like, alright guys, everything's gonna be cool, all I want is Kal-El. And, like, Clark's not even worried.
Well,
like,
he's worried, but it's not the... It just feels
I'm talking
off.
about identity, as far as identity is concerned.
Yes.
He's not... He hands himself over to the government.
Right.
He tells the government, yeah, I've been living in Kansas for 33 years.
Why would you do that? Why would you tell them that?
And then not to mention all these other times throughout the movie that obviously his identity is clearly given away. So he goes and he flies back to his parents' place at one point.
Right.
And he's there in his costume,
hugging his mom,
hugging his mother, and here comes Lois, who's been driven up
by a cop.
Well, was it the cops or was it the government?
I'm pretty sure it was the cops,
well,
but either way, authority figure.
Okay, and she comes running up and she's like, Clark! Right in front of the cops, and, you know, later on there's, like, alien destruction that happens on the Smallville farm.
On the Kent farm.
On the Kent farm. And it's, like, pretty far away from other places where destruction is going on, like Metropolis, that's
well, and downtown Smallville, too.
Like, that's still kind of far away. So when the government shows up, like, I'm imagining, like, FEMA shows up to the scene later. Like, okay, the government's gonna come and help out and fix all the destruction. So what was the destruction doing this far out here? What, is Clark's mom just gonna be like, whoa? Like,
they're aliens!
They don't need a reason to just show up and blow things up, right? Like,
that's the excuse.
Does the government not show up and be like, oh, well, Clark is the Superman guy? Or do they not be like, huh, did you, like, have an alien spacecraft sitting around in your farm somewhere that they wanted? Can we look at it? Like, and nobody cared?
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Because there's so many... And then the plot holes just get bigger from that point. Because, you think about it, in most stories, Superman coming into existence, coming into the public consciousness as a character, is shown as a thing of wonder. something terrible is happening, and then out of the skies, here, look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's this guy who can do these amazing things, and we're in awe of him. Whereas here, there's no awe, there is fear, and he's not even doing it for... he's doing it for somewhat noble reasons, but it's not quite the same thing when you're doing it as a result of a threat. Because Zod shows up first. He sends out the signal, deliver Kal-El to me, I'll spare the rest of the world. I just want him, like she said. And then Clark has to think about, well, am I going to do it? I don't know, maybe I should go to church. And then he goes to church, and then he asks this priest, hey, priest, I'm the dude the alien's looking for, so I'm an alien. So don't let that weird you out or anything. But, should I? And then it's I get the feel they were going for, and I actually appreciate what Snyder was doing in that particular scene. I kind of liked that he was trying to get earthly, so to speak, counsel. But at the same time, the first time the world sees him as Superman, they're already afraid of him. And that is anti-Superman. You're not supposed to be afraid of him. Because again, the whole thing about this story is, it is fiction, and Superman is not supposed to be necessarily the most relatable character. He's supposed to be this, or what he's become, more or less, is this ideal that people aspire toward. You can't be Superman, but you look to Superman as an ideal, and that's the kind of thing that Jor-El sets him up to be.
Because here's... I was having this discussion with you earlier, and this take has been done many times before throughout Superman stories, that, Superman could be considered a threat, especially because Zod shows up and he's like, well, hand over Kal-El, and had Superman not been there to begin with, he wouldn't have come down and rained all this terror. Then add to the fact that that Clark is fighting Zod, and especially in this take, the destruction is ludicrous. Now, visually, it's a spectacle beyond anyone's wildest dreams.
The action is worthy of Superman. I'll give it that much. The action is worthy.
It's really
of
friggin'
Superman's
hardcore.
story.
Okay, I didn't necessarily like all the special effects. I thought it very much looked like a video game throughout the majority of it.
I have to concede that. Yeah.
But I thought it was bad. But it otherwise was cool to look at. It was just cool destruction. If you could just set that apart and just see it for nothing but the pure destruction that it was, then that was cool. The thing is, they painted in such a way that I cannot imagine anyone seeing Clark as a hero after that, because he only aided in the destruction of cities and cities and cities.
Well, two.
Come on, they were halfway...
Smallville and Metropolis.
They were halfway all over the friggin' world. In fact, they went into outer space and destroyed a friggin' satellite. And then the satellite comes down, and it rains destruction from the heavens also.
Yeah.
And, just the most destruction I have ever seen out of Superman himself.
Uh-huh.
I can't see, and yet there's characters saying, he saved us. And I'm like, are you kidding me? If you put me in that situation, of course I see where some writers have been like, no, we don't know if we can trust Superman. If put in that situation, would absolutely not trust that guy, and would want him off the planet immediately to keep people from coming and trying to destroy this guy.
Now, it's very interesting that you say this, and I'm going to get back to this. I'm going to remind you that you said that in a little bit. But
because I realize that the world will need Superman at a later date, but the world doesn't know that. All the world knows.
No, they don't. So,
Superman himself doesn't know that.
Well, no, he doesn't. And that's the thing. The movie presumes upon itself that you as the audience know, well, yeah, there's a reason for it, but the movie doesn't give you a reason. It's banking on the fact that you know there's going to eventually be a reason. Mm-hmm. And that, I don't think, is good storytelling.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So, yeah, Zod does eventually have Kal-El Clark, because he's not Superman, delivered to him and explains to him, look, we have this culture, we have these machines that can terraform planets to our atmosphere, and you gotta help us with that because that's a thing, you're one of us. And Clark's like, no, you kind of already, I was already warned about you and you're kind of a dick, so I probably shouldn't. But then they like
and
check
they're kind of
his mind
attached to this planet now too, and you know, I'm gonna be the bridge between two worlds now. Okay, thanks, bye.
Yeah, and it's like, again, Zod's portrayal, not a problem with it at all. I actually like it. You know, Zod very much comes across as, I'm doing what I'm doing because this is what I was born to do, and I will do it to the best of my ability. And that characterization doesn't falter at all. So he is the one character I think is the best in the movie.
Actually, I'd agree with you, yeah.
Versus somebody like, say, just jumping across here to somebody, say, like Perry White, you know, played by Lawrence Fishburne here. In the way it's written, it's a throwaway role. Because you can have any actor yell at the Lois Lane character, and it didn't mean anything because it doesn't amount to anything.
Speaking of throwaway roles...
Oh, you want to... Jenny?
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people don't know this. There is no Jimmy Olsen in this movie. Who we are given here is basically a gender swap of this character only named Jenny. They never fully address who she is, but if you check the credits and everything else, she's Jenny Olsen.
Which begs the question, like, she's otherwise useless. She doesn't do anything. She gets trapped by some rubble. Like, that's
which is sometimes what Jimmy would do, but...
But otherwise, she's just some chick.
Yeah.
And, like, why even be like, you see what we did there? No, I don't, actually.
Because...
You just kind of threw a name on top of a character that means nothing. So, okay, thanks
hey, look
for that.
how clever we are. How clever were you? Because if she's a gender swap, she should at least have Jimmy's job, which was photographer. But she's not a photographer, she's an intern. And you already had Lois taking her own pictures there up in the Arctic, so there's no point in that. So why have her? Other than you had to, you felt you needed to have this character. But when you're taking so many liberties as it is, then what's the point? And that was the problem, you know, going back to the whole Daily Planet thing. The Daily Planet in general felt like it was a tack on because they had to. And there's no weight to being at the Daily Planet, whereas, you know, the Daily Planet in other stories is the first one to report on Superman, or they're the ones who name Superman. You know, Lois is the one who gives him the name. And even in here, you know, you see it in the commercials, she starts to call him that, and then, you know, she gets squawked over by a mic. But then later on, you know, getting to the meat of it, you know, I believe it's after the quote-unquote attack on Smallville that they radio back to all the generals and whatnot is, they've got a plan. Miss Lane and Superman are on their way. And the general's like, Superman? That's what they're calling him now.
Yeah, they. Who's they?
Who's they?
They who?
You mean Lois and...
Or do you mean people, like, in general, casual, you know, civilians? Like who is calling him Superman?
And it doesn't have weight. Which is what... the thing I love about the Richard Donner version, and, you know, it's mirrored in the... in other stories, even in the animated series, is that in that one scene, you know, Superman grants an interview to Lois, they have that magical night, he displays all his powers, he explains everything he can do, and he just generally shows that he is this good person, and after all that, Lois comes to the conclusion he is a Superman. Wait, that's perfect. That's what we'll call him. Whereas here, it's just kind of like, well, we need to call him Superman at some point. Wait, we haven't called him Superman yet? Oh, snap. Quick, call him Superman, call him Superman. Okay, say that. And it doesn't... It does
just feel like a throwaway.
It feels like a throwaway, and it's not like...
Like, get it, because this is a movie about Superman, so here you go.
And it's like, no, this is not how you're supposed to serve this to me. This is a story. It's like... I ordered fries. Not even I ordered fries. I ordered a burger. You gave me the fries. You gave me the drink. Where's my burger? Oh yeah, sorry. And that's how the name Superman comes up in this movie. You know, like, oh, sorry, yeah. We were supposed to give you that.
Like Burger King slipped up on your order.
Yeah.
And was like, sorry, my bad.
And it's like, well, by this point, I was expecting...
Wait, who's doing the Superman burger? It's Carl's Jr., right?
It's Carl's Jr.
Okay, so Carl's Jr. screwed up on your order. Hey, where's my Superman burger? Oh, here you
go. Well, dang, I was supposed to have gotten this burger back when I got the fries and the drink. Now you're giving it to me late, it's cold, and I don't really feel like eating it. That's how I feel.
Sounds like Carl's Jr. to me.
Sounds like Carl's Jr. to me, yeah. So...
At least our franchises.
At least our franchises. And then we go into this whole thing of, well, they figure out that the way to stop Zod and terraforming Earth to be like the new Krypton, which isn't a new thing, you know, new Krypton, that's been done before, is that they have to use Clark's infant, you know, capsule to crash into Zod's ship, and then that'll stop everything. But in the process of doing that, like she mentions before, the damage done to Metropolis. And again, why did they have to go to Metropolis?
I don't even know.
Because that's another plot hole. Why did they go to Metropolis at all? Why does Zod pick on Lois Lane?
Because when did he see that Clark was in any way attached to Lois?
Unless they were, like, monitoring, you know, Earth transmissions, which they never mention. I mean, you assume, and that's the thing, you have to assume.
And I also assume that he starts terraforming the planet very violently and dangerously around Metropolis because that's where people are, and Zod doesn't like people, so he wanted to destroy as many people right away as humanly possible. Like, so many people died!
Yes, a lot of people died in that...
This is, again, why I'm like, who in their right mind, after all of that, would say, let's keep this Superman on our planet? Who on Earth would do that?
And it's like...
Who would think, no, he saved us! No! He's the reason the destruction came in the first place! Well, and he continued to aid in the destruction.
It is and it isn't, because, you know, the way they've written this movie, Zod... Oh, I guess we never explained that. Zod was originally put in the Phantom Zone. Yes, the Phantom Zone is in this movie. And he's put in the Phantom Zone, and very similarly to Superman 2, an explosion gets him out of the Phantom Zone, him and his cronies. Whereas in the second movie, it was Superman's fault by throwing something into space that blew up, and that's what freed them from the Phantom Zone, because how convenient, the Phantom Zone just happened to be going by Earth at that moment. Here, it's the destruction of Krypton that gets them out of the Phantom Zone, which is weird because they were put in there like a week before Krypton blew up or something like that?
It looked like the exact same friggin' day, are you kidding me?
Or something like that.
I can't even tell.
And then, you know, Krypton blows up, and then they weren't even imprisoned for that long for their, you know, anarchy that they were trying to bring to Krypton's council. And it's like, oh, well, we're fine, we're just gonna go around and find other places we've been. And that feels too close to the J.J. Abrams revamp of Star Trek.
That scene in particular where they're showing them go from site to site, where...
Yeah.
What is word I'm looking for? The camps that they had previously...
Yeah, the Kryptonian moon missions, you'd call them, or colonization
missions. Yeah. That especially looked like pre-rendered video game opening cinematics.
Yes.
That in particular. A lot of Zod's cronies fight scenes and their suits.
It's very Mass Effect to me.
So very CG. Near the end of all the destruction, there's like really bad smoke overlays that you can see as just one flat smoke screen in the corner. I thought it was really bad looking because it's an effect that I have used in really bad reviews and junk previously, and that's not good. That is like bottom of the barrel.
Like, I'll say,
technology.
As far as to compare to other movies, as far as CG integration goes, it's like Amazing Spider-Man, Man of Steel. Because at least there, it was a little easier to swallow because I knew I'm dealing with a guy in a fully covered costume and a lizard man, and it didn't quite take me out of it, versus here where we're seeing people's faces.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious when you transition from person about to punch, and then, oh, CG.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, we get into these fights, Superman's got to take out, this pod on the other side of the world, and then the action there felt like Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Because it felt like this epic struggle, like, oh, these tendrils are coming at me, I've got to punch my way through them, and, fly harder and faster and yell while I'm doing it. And it's very intense and very visceral, and it felt right, but then, again, saying that all of this weight isn't put on it, it doesn't quite feel right.
Mm.
And then, we get finally to the throwdown between Zod and I guess, yeah, now you call him Superman. And it's good. Don't get me wrong, it's good.
No, the fights are fun to watch,
yes.
Admittedly.
Because it's everything Superman fans were asking for from Superman Returns. And that, people complained, oh, there wasn't enough action in this movie. Well, here's the action. Like what the Avengers were for Iron Man, like where was all the action in Iron Man 1 and 2? You got the Avengers. Where was all the action in Superman Returns? It's here in Man of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they are trashing just about every building in Metropolis. Just like, think Advent Children, that last fight between Cloud and Sephiroth, only there's no melee weapons involved, really.
Uh-huh.
And that's pretty much what they were doing.
Yeah. It was just a big old, very fast grapple fest.
Yes. And it's kind of what you want. And then it comes down to this point where, Clark has saved Lois again from falling, like for the second or third time.
It happens a few times.
It happens a few times.
It happens more than one time.
And then, Clark, because I still don't feel right calling him Superman, gets a kiss from Lois while Jenny and Perry White are watching. And it's
and while things are still, very super destructed and exploding, and, this isn't really the time for this, nor do I feel like a relationship has actually been building. I just see, this Superman who has been trying to figure out who he is this whole time, and in fact, even after the kiss, he's like, I am so very focused on this one thing that I have to do, and I just kissed her because, it seemed like the thing to do at the time.
And even then, the way Lois is they say it's all downhill after the first kiss, that puts this relationship between Clark and Lois into the same genre, or the same sphere, as Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock in Speed. They've both been through a traumatic experience together, the thing to do was kiss. It's that same dang setup.
Uh-huh.
So, which means that the relationship is hollow. There's no weight there.
There really isn't. No, I don't see a relationship at all that formed in any way, shape, or form in this movie. So after all that destruction...
And then, it gets down to that last little bit with Zod, and Superman has to make a choice between, he's holding Zod back, trying to keep him from hurting anybody. Zod, having learned how to harness heat vision, is aiming his heat vision at this group of people. And, Clark has to make a decision. Do I let him do it, or do I stop him? Which in and of itself isn't a decision.
Yeah. I also kind of wondered, as Zod is heat visioning over at these people trapped in the corner...
Very James Bond style.
Yeah, why didn't he just keep turning his head or turn his eyes?
Well, because the thing about it is, Clark...
He wasn't so much in a chokehold that he couldn't just turn his neck a little bit.
Yeah.
I was like, you gonna look at them? Are you gonna look at them? No? Okay, you had plenty of time to do it before your neck got snapped.
And even then, there was
plenty of time to do it.
There was plenty of time. Not only that, the movie makes you think that he had this dire decision to make between letting these people die or stopping Zod, when really, if you know anything about Superman, there were other alternatives. Maybe I could just pick him up and fly him away. Or maybe I could punch him in the face. I can take the heat vision. That would stop him.
He already had been punching him in the face for 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, but even then, flying away was an option with him. He had been doing it.
Yeah, and that didn't work either. I think that argument out of view is a little...
Well, even then, I wasn't feeling it, but eventually he makes the decision to permanently stop Zod, and
the way the movie set it up, quite frankly, he had to, because Zod kept coming back for more.
Yeah, and
he probably could have kept going had he not snapped his neck.
And he does it very, very large, and then he's obviously sad about it, and then he's good. Because he got over it pretty quickly.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much time passed between...
Well, no, because he yells right there, and then Lois runs up to him, and then it's like, alright, I had to do it.
I didn't catch that. I saw
that was right there.
I saw him bury his head into her stomach. That didn't seem like I'm okay to me. I think those couple of things, now you're just grabbing at things when I have a problem with tons of things, but those few things I don't entirely understand.
It's just like he would have Lois console him only because she was there.
Well, that's weird.
That is a little. It's very not opportunistic. What's the word I'm looking for? Convenient.
Mm-hmm.
It's a relationship of convenience. Oh, I just happened to be flying by while you fell. All right, I'll save you. Oh, I'll do it again. Oh, you kissed me. That's convenient. Like that's their whole relationship right there. It's convenience, and there's no real relationship, like you say.
Yeah.
And then, like I said this in the podcast, the thing I was worried about most was how they were going to handle the Clark Kent I came to expect about him working at the Daily Planet and whatnot.
Well, I already said, like, how's that gonna work with Lois already knowing who he is? So she's just not gonna know who he is when he shows up at the Daily Planet?
Or she's gonna have to lie that she doesn't know who he is.
Which ended up happening. She had to lie about not knowing who he is. And so, there he goes, applying to the Daily Planet, and he says, well, I'm gonna need a job where I'm going to be able to go up and do really crazy things, and it's not going to be weird that I'm going to be there because a journalist does that. So, there he goes applying to the Daily Planet.
No, he had a job at the Daily Planet.
He got a job at the Daily Planet as Clark Kent. Never mind the fact that it's so friggin' easy to tell who Clark Kent is, and you've already been using all of these other aliases. Why did you not use another alias to apply to the Daily Planet?
And then on top of that, this thing has been going on, all over the place. The government knows what you look like. You showed up to them face to face. And the thing I was worried about most, all he did was put on glasses. And nobody knows. Perry White looked at him and saw him there.
And there wasn't even a look on his face like, do I recognize you? No, that wasn't even...
It wasn't even a thought, like, don't you kind of look like that dude who was... No. They don't even bother to do that. It's, okay, I'm just not going to look at this guy.
Like, I realize, of course, Superman has been very much built on this whole, oh, isn't that funny, he puts on a suit and glasses and nobody recognizes him. However, this movie was so hard trying to build this up as though this was the realistic Superman that people have been waiting for.
And yet
you show up as Clark Kent when it's easy to figure out who you are.
Because
already.
The movie has proven it's easy to figure out who you are.
And then you just put on glasses and everything's kosher. What?
And then you just made this big to-do about, hey, government, quit sending drones to come find out where I hang my cape. Well, they don't need drones. They just have to send Lois to go find you. It's like, why would you...
In fact, the government's all, earlier in the movie, you told Lois who you are. Why won't you tell us? And they're just like, oh, we'll just wait until he's ready to tell us who he is. They're not like, follow Lois Lane. She knows who he is. Just follow him. Just follow her, and you will know exactly who he is.
Especially in the times we live in with friggin' what was it called? Prism?
Oh, yeah.
In the times we live in, you can't tell me the government couldn't backtrack Lois's steps. Hey, wait a minute, she showed up in Smallville right before it got hit. Hey, she showed up at the Kent farm.
In fact, there's police records to show that the police... Hey, cops, where were you? Yeah, there's this guy in this suit, and he was at the Kent farm, and she was yelling out Clark to him for some reason. Oh my god! Oh my god!
At that point, why even bother having a secret identity? if you were going to do this, Snyder, you should have gone all the way. I know you had to do this because this is what the character is, but the way you've set it up, it doesn't make sense for him to put on a pair of glasses and not be visible anymore.
Nope.
He might as well have just stayed Superman full time.
Which is what it sounds like he wants to do anyway. So, what? Why does he need a job at the Daily Planet anymore?
Yeah. Like, he couldn't have just been Superman 90% of the time and, like, 10%, go, live with his mom? Like, why does he... And even then, this is the modern world, right? Why does he even need to be at the Daily Planet to have an excuse to go places? You've obviously shown you can fly, have super strength, and do all these things, on top of the fact that this is a fiction story. Clark, there's a little thing called the internet. The internet, Twitter will tell you faster than the Daily Planet will, because it's a print newspaper. Twitter will tell you faster when something is going down on the other side of the world than somebody phoning it in.
He could hear it faster.
Right, he's got super senses, he can see through these things, so why does he need to still work at the newspaper? But we have to keep it because that's part of the story.
Yeah, that's part of the story when it was a thing of wonder and complete and utter fantasy, where
Right.
things were a little more lighthearted and like, here's our superhero and he's just under this guise because he does that.
Right.
But when it was once a very simple story.
But when you try to tell this, and the way they always tried to frame it in all these interviews, the realistic version of Superman, you're telling me the realistic version of Superman does involve a person who came from another planet, can fly, has laser heat vision, and super strength, but he doesn't know how to check Twitter. He doesn't even have a phone can track, but...
Well, he obviously doesn't know how to secret identity. He obviously doesn't know how to do anything other than be super focused on this one super task at hand. But I don't think this Clark knows anything, to be honest. I think this Clark is very bullheaded and doesn't really think things through very well.
Now, does Henry Cavill look good in the role? Yes. He looks like Superman.
He's missing the Jerry curl, though.
Well, yeah, that was a stylistic choice. He looks like Superman. The timbre in his voice is what you would think Superman's speech should sound like. And he says things that kind of sound heroic. But that's about it.
Mm.
And then, we get into this bigger thing now, since that's pretty much the whole movie. Now you go, well, where do we go from here? This movie is obviously going to make a ton of money. It's already made $21 million in...
As of the time of this recording, we're just rolling over to the 15th.
So this has been in theaters about 24 hours, a little over. And, yeah, everybody knows what's going down. WB wants that sweet Avengers money, so they're going to try and set up this bigger world with leading into Justice League. And are there nods to a sequel in this movie? Yes. You see LexCorp logos all over the place in this movie. Are there nods to other heroes? I personally didn't see any. I've heard tell that there's Wayne Enterprises logos hidden, or not so hidden in the background. I'd have to see it again to check. But David Goyer, who wrote the script for this and is tapped to do the next script, said, yeah, we left this world as such to where other heroes would feel inspired that this guy exists and now they feel comfortable putting on a costume. Would you?
No!
No. Now, going back to what you said earlier, though, about the reaction to all this destruction, go ahead and repeat that again, how you felt about Superman after all that crap going down in Metropolis.
Well, it was such a ridiculous amount of destruction that one was caused first by him existing at all, and then Zod comes down and tries to completely change the whole planet and thus kill all humanity. Mm-hmm. And then two, Clark fighting Zod so hard that he destroys buildings, probably killed people in the process, slamming into buildings, building after building after building after building after building after building, bringing down a satellite to come crashing down to Earth and destroying buildings and buildings and buildings and buildings. It's probably killing hundreds of thousands of people in the process as well. Superman is equally as responsible for the death of human beings. Mm-hmm. Easily in this movie.
Now, based off that argument, and based off a specific storyline, a specific set of comics, I think it was a 5-parter called, wouldn't you know it, Lex Luthor, Man of Steel. You have perfectly described how they would set up Lex Luthor for the next movie. As this rich industrialist who had all of this property that was destroyed by Superman, as somebody who would not trust him, who sees him as responsible. You know how much property I lost because of you?
But that's the thing, like, that is not just Lex Luthor being a douchebag, that is, like, legit now.
Exactly, but isn't that what the movie is trying to be? Legit in the realistic terms of how somebody would view this.
Except for the fact that my mind is blown that there are characters who are like, he saved us! They are so deer in the headlights with this man, like, who on God's green earth would say that after this man has done all of this?
But this is the thing about Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, is that they set it up as such that Luthor sees himself as the hero because this guy can't be trusted.
I would be on the side of Lex, quite honestly, and I wouldn't want to see Lex lose.
But wouldn't that be an interesting movie?
Maybe. They just set it up. I don't know. I think it was set up kind of stupid.
But if they followed through with that,
perhaps
for a sequel.
But if they try and because obviously Lex Luthor's got to be a villain, but I wouldn't see him as a villain. I could not. There's no way, because I, as a human being, if put into that circumstance, would not trust Superman either.
So for the way that Zack Snyder is setting this up, you would say that we would get for the first time ever on screen, a sympathetic Lex Luthor if played as such.
Perhaps, yeah.
Because his hatred for Superman would be founded.
It's just that I also see the world being fascinated with Superman and still thinking he's a hero, and I don't understand why. Like, that's the part that takes me out of it entirely. Like, I see what you're saying about painting an image of, yeah, now we can totally buy into Lex Luthor's potential story. But I don't buy into the whole rest of the world. Mm-hmm. That crushes it. That crushes all believability for me.
Now, the thing about it going from that is that I think they have to do Lex Luthor now in this next movie. Because if they go with any other villain, it doesn't address any of that. Mm-hmm. And I hope that's what they're setting up for the next, whatever you call it, Man of Steel 2, or, name him some other nickname. You like using the nickname instead of the actual name of the character.
Soup.
Yeah, call him Soup. Okay, fine. For Soup 2. It would have to be Lex Luthor, because if you go on to Metallo, if you go on to, you wouldn't touch Darkseid yet, but you know what I'm saying, it leaves all that stuff unaddressed, and if you're trying to go on this quote-unquote real world, you need it. You need somebody who's got that aspect. Now, as for Justice League, that's neither here nor there in my eyes. I don't think there was enough credence in this movie to show that there's a bigger world other than maybe an Easter egg here or there. But come on, they did that in freaking Superman Returns, showing a clock on the wall that said Gotham. Ooh. Mm. And, that meant nothing because that story didn't go anywhere.
Yep.
So it's going to take a lot more than that to create a Justice League movie. At least as far as Marvel was concerned, Marvel didn't, think, oh, maybe we'll tack this on there. No, they had a plan. And they executed that plan. Man of Steel isn't a plan. Man of Steel is a bet. Man of Steel is a one-shot, and it's a bet. And it is very obviously a bet.
Although it's making money, so they might be winning said bet. It might be funding the Justice League movie.
But then again, it's going to take a better story than that to get it off the ground.
God, I hope so. I hope it means better writing.
Because it's the same thing versus Avengers versus Justice League in that. Like I said about Superman. Superman showing up and being a thing of wonder is different from him responding to something that already happened. Justice League being a thing of wonder would be different than responding to the Avengers' success. Mm. I think that argument makes perfect sense. Mm. So, all in all, just to kind of put a cap on things, do I like this movie? I actually have to say I don't know. There are parts of it that make perfect sense for a Superman movie, like the fights, like certain small vignettes between, like, Clark and his mom, or...
Hands down, my favorite parts
or
were
Krypton.
And if just set alone by itself, the fight scenes, just for sheer carnage reasons.
Yes.
And that's it. You can't say that the story led up to it very well.
Right.
It's just these two things sat apart from one another, bookending this mishmash of things in the middle.
Right.
The beginning and the end were great. Except for the tail end with the Daily Planet. The
Right.
beginning and the end were great. The middle and the Daily Planet, pretty lukewarm at best.
Henry Cavill is Superman. I have to call him Superman because that's who he's supposed to be, but I don't feel like he's Superman. I don't. I actually think Brandon Routh was a better Superman, despite the whole baby daddy issues that they wrote him in. I think he was a better Superman.
Really?
I do.
Okay.
That's not to say I like the movie, but I think he was a better Superman.
I understand your meaning.
Sequel, of course, it's going to happen. I can't even, some people have rating systems. I can't even rate this thing. It's very...
It's like, if I could rate the beginning of the movie, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. And if I could rate the carnage, it would be like an 8.5
out of 10.
Out of 10, due solely to the fact that it looks like a video game in a live-action movie.
And then the rest of the movie is just kind of like a...
For me, it's like a 4.
A 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And so... I guess you average that out.
So you average it to what?
Like a
6? Or between a 6 and a 7?
And
7 is even high.
Yeah, I think 7 is too high for that.
6.5, like...
And even then, why do we have to...
Screw rating systems.
Yeah, screw that.
Like, watch the beginning and the end of the movie, and if you can avoid it, don't watch the middle.
And again, if you like this movie, that's your opinion, everybody's gonna have... We can't argue with it, it's yours, we got ours. But yeah, that was Man of Steel for us.
You can feel free to tell us what you thought of it if you've seen it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say they like it so far, and yeah, that'll happen. But yeah,
I don't know why that will happen, but it will.
Well, you know why it'll happen, because people will have their opinions.
I did just say that we can't argue opinions, didn't I?
Yeah.
Dang it.
All right. So that's pretty much going to cover up our thoughts on Man of Steel. Thanks for watching, and next time there's a movie worth talking about, we'll probably talk about it.
Okay, thanks, bye.